the other partner, in a funny way, is the film critic. And you know, what is the role of the film critic in your world now?
The role of the film critic is to rubber stamp and endorse every film we release and find a reason why
people should come
and see it.
But this is not how it works.
No, they're stubborn that way, and they insist on trying to voice their own opinions on people. It's again, they're part of that same process as we were discussing earlier. You know, unless when you're releasing review-driven films, you need reviewers out there that people respect and pay attention to.
But they still make an enormous difference.
Well,
if they
totally,
like it,
totally.
especially with
success and
here's
failure
the thing,
frequently.
Foreign films, more than anything else, I think, are independent.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if the studios were as dependent on critics would be, my God, the junkets would be
the movies would
lavish.
be better. Let's put it that way.
The movies would no doubt be better. Yes. You know, and it would, frankly, it would be wonderful.
Well, once upon a time, there was a time when they had more impact on mainstream movies than they do now.
You know, it's by the mid '70s, by late '70s.
Well, the wide release killed that. The advertising, the television.
Well, and you know, the post Easy Rider Raging Bull period. You know, the new American cinema of the early '70s. When that gave way to, you know, the Rockies and the Star Wars. And
people forget that Rocky,
I know, it won an Oscar.
It was a small little movie that was built.
I'm from Philadelphia.
Very
I went to see that movie with some friends, and my eyes were rolling. It's like not to.
It's hard to believe that John Avildsen lost that he won the Oscar for the one that lost that year. It's hard to believe.
Yeah. No, but that was films were definitely pitched at a without not rehashing that period, which is pretty well known. But yeah, you know, you see this in the big ads that the studios run. The stars and the positive quotes, they're almost totemic, you know. They're just there. It doesn't matter who's saying it. You know,
and then they're the dollar quote meisters.
Exactly.
The quote horse.
Is who I'm talking about.
Which we can, you know, some of us can tell the difference. Some people don't. But in your world, the critics really do make a difference. And if you get a positive or a negative review in a given market, you gave me an example.
Boston is a good example. Yeah, we opened Potiche to a less than favorable review. Something about the guy not getting it. Clearly, he's not. I do have to question. Well, we won't get into the details, but you know, it didn't get a good review and failed miserably, despite all the other stuff that we were doing, you know, to make it happen. Which sometimes begs the question of, like, what's the point of advertising? What's the point of all the other stuff when the Boston Globe review is the pivotal issue? And a lot of distributors have come to those conclusions.
Well, what about
or have made other. Rotten Tomatoes is certainly important, and I think that maybe comes into play more when people are deciding to watch a film when it comes to home entertainment. You know, when it comes to, you know, DVD or VOD, and
it sort of ignores the individual voice or the local impact that a given critic can have.
Sure. And yet, you know, there's something. You know, there's been a lot of discussion about critics losing their jobs, newspapers losing their readership, and at the same time, you know, these reviews have more longevity than they ever did.
That's true.
It used to be, okay, the review was in the Friday paper. Well, by next week, the Friday paper is gone. There was no record of it, really, that you could access. Now those things live on and on and on. And there's this echo chamber that didn't exist before. So even though the individual critics perhaps have lost some of their sway and their ability to drive people to theaters, the collective voice seems to have become magnified in importance.
Are there particular critics who have more impact in your world than others?
Yeah, I mean, the major, the New York Times obviously is a big deal, the LA Times, the major dailies
Are still top dog?
yeah,
And Roger
yeah.
Ebert,
Roger Ebert, of course, I mean,
Christy Lemire.
yeah, yeah. Nicholas Sal in San Francisco, the two guys are writing at the Boston Globe. I mean, there's a lot of markets. I mean, one of the problems is the syndication of a lot of reviews. Wasn't always the case. A mid-sized market might have 2 reviewers. Now they only have 1 reviewer, so that guy is only reviewing, 3 or 4 of the films that are opening, and the rest of them will be covered by a wire service. And I think the local readers don't respond as strongly to a wire service review, no matter how favorable it might be.
So what are the other films that you have coming up in the next year that we should be looking out for?
Did I mention a movie called Quill? I could go on and on.
You went on and on about Quill.
It just happens to be probably our least
high
profile. But as we've said, they're like children. We love them all. Some of them are just more popular. But coming up next is a film called Bride Flight. It's a Dutch movie set mostly in New Zealand, largely in English, and it's a classic woman's picture. If I can get away with that phrase. But it's a generational saga, 3 women reuniting years later at the funeral of the man that they all loved and was involved with in different ways. Has won a number of audience awards at regional festivals. Real crowd pleaser. That's one that we're concerned that the critics might pour cold water on it because it doesn't conform to their notions.
Sometimes they go higher brow than the audience does.
Yeah. And yet, it feels like a Douglas Sirk movie, so we'll see. Again, we're not, I think our tastes are a little bit more Catholic than typical reviewers are. We like a wider range of films than they do. But next up is a completely different title, Viva Riva. It's the first Congolese feature in practically forever. It is one hell of a fun movie. It's this Congolese director named Joe Munga, who is extremely personable, extremely talented. He'll be coming over here. Hopefully you have an opportunity to speak with him. It's basically a noir set in Kinshasa about a bootlegger of fuel, of gasoline, and bringing this load of gasoline to this fuel-starved market of Kinshasa. He's suddenly got a lot of money, some easy money, and he falls for this classic femme fatale figure, who happens to be the kept woman of a rather heavy-duty gangster, and so it's a lot of the same conventions and tropes that we're familiar with from the genre, but it's
a more exotic setting.
The setting is really cool, and it's also has some elements that the best Hong Kong action films have, which is complete novelty of a number of things, which is for aficionados is mandatory. But it just won.
Where did you find it?
In Toronto. I was wandering along one morning and ran into a journalist. He said, you got to check it out. And he was right. It's really good. It just won a bunch of...
Glad we're good for something.
Yes. Well, you got to take
no, it's true.
ideas from anywhere.
Especially at a festival. That's the tip you want.
It just won the best film at the Pan-African Film Festival in LA. It's just finished playing at the New York African Film Festival. But it's something that it's a very stark departure from traditional African films that we've seen over the years that might be a little bit more, this is a genre film, unabashedly a genre film, and it also is saying that African films do not have to be uplifting. They don't have to be. They don't have to create positive role models. They don't have to expose the problems of society. Although I think it does that. What I think this movie is saying is that African films, like any other nation's films, just have to be entertaining and connect with people. And so hopefully this one will be received well.
And then you're going off to Cannes in May to look for new ones.
Look for new ones. I should probably get to Mysteries of Lisbon for fear that people think that we're just a bunch of trash heads, you know, selling middle-brow and action films and whatever other names that could be attributed to our actions. But Mysteries of Lisbon, Raul Ruiz's 4.5 hour long
okay, you've got some cred.
epic. We didn't anticipate buying this movie in Berlin, but we were galvanized by it, all 4.5 hours of it. And
how are you going to handle that in release?
we are going to release it all in one fell swoop. You know, our argument is that it's actually a very efficient use of one's time, comparing it to, let's say, sitting down and reading a big, thick 19th century novel, which this movie is based on. You can do it in an afternoon or an evening. So it's actually a very efficient use of one's time.